And Kelly, you're invited.
Thank you. Obviously.
We'll
I was coming either way, but thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys were here too. That's so funny.
Hi, I'm Julia.
I'm Rachael.
And I'm Kelly.
And this is What You Should Read,
the podcast where we should all over our books.
How's everybody doing? We're recording on a Friday. That's different for us.
I know, Friday evening.
Yeah. We know how to start the weekend off right.
Exactly. I mean, I was going to have a crazy wild Friday night of watching The Bachelor, or The Bachelorette, I should say, but...
You haven't watched it yet, Rachael?
Not yet. I'll do it after this.
Okay. Text me when you are. Okay. But before you do, Rachael, what are you reading this week?
I'm reading a book that's real weird. It's called The Troop by Nick Cutter. I talked about it last week in Recent Acquisitions because I just got it from the library. It is very strange. It's rather creepy, but not scary. It's not like, like you're like, what's going to happen, as in what could possibly happen next? But it's not like a spooky horror. It's more just like a horror. But I'm enjoying it because it's about, I feel like if I say anything, it's gonna.
Yeah, you can't spoil.
Gonna spoil it. So I'll just say this: Prince Edward Island is the setting. An island off the coast of Prince Edward Island.
So it's Anne of Green Gables, basically.
Anne of Green Gables, but it's Boy Scouts and Lord of the Flies, and there's gross stuff. So.
Does not sound like a Julia book.
Actually, I think you'd like it.
Every book.
Yeah, Kelly would like it. Julia, I think you actually would like it. The writing style, and it's just very it's a mystery. You don't know what's happening. So.
Okay.
So I hope whoever is listening to this is watching it on the YouTube, because Julia had the most skeptical face. Like, no.
Okay.
But it sounds amazing, and I am in.
Ellie, what are you reading?
Ooh, I am reading Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. And I don't think we talked about this before, but although I threatened to, you and Rachael both have a tendency to remove the dust jackets from your books when you read them, like books going naked. I generally don't do that, but on a whim, I took the dust jacket off, and this is like the most stunning book cover ever. Like, so much better than the dust jacket.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I may be converting to your weird heathen ways.
It just feels better.
That with all the love in my heart.
It feels better to me. I love that naked cover, though. I hope that they take inspiration from that for the paperback.
I hope so too. It's I'm gonna put it down so I stop looking at it, because it's just super, super cute. And just striking, I think. But anyway, so Cemetery Boys is about a boy who is trans, and what I love about it is they mention that his family sometimes calls him by his dead name, but they don't say what it is. Like, we only know his actual name, like the name that he has chosen for himself, and I love that choice.
That's because it speaks to the issue, but it's done in a way that's respectful. Oh, that's really interesting.
And I think this is actually going to be coming up in our spooky Halloween story, or next week, because I do think this is a book that both of you would absolutely love, and it's kind of Halloween adjacent, but not really scary.
Is it horror?
No, at least not so far. Okay. But his family, the women in the family all have one particular set of gifts, and the men have another. So his family is convinced that because they only see him as a girl, even though he has come out as trans, they don't trust that he has the male talent. and they can speak to the dead. The men can.
Wow.
So it's kind of Halloween appropriate without being like super scary or gory, at least so far. So I'm super into it.
Good.
And yeah.
It doesn't sound
Aiden
scary,
Thomas,
but it sounds good. It sounds good. Yeah.
But what I love, and I'm so sorry, like I don't want this whole podcast to be that, but Aiden Thomas, they identify as queer and trans themselves, and their chosen pronouns are they and them. And the original story they had for Cemetery Boys was going to be of a different culture. I'm not sure which one. And the agent stopped when they were telling them about the kernel of an idea they had. And the agent said, Aiden, you know, you could write about your own culture, right? So they kind of just realized then that it could have a transgender protagonist and be a Latinx story.
That's great.
Which I find just completely fascinating, because you get all these different cultures that I especially am not super aware of. And I'm only 3 chapters in, but everything about this story is just so good, and I'm sucked in, and I can't wait to see where the story goes.
Yay.
Yay.
Well, I'm almost finished with The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I'm trying to savor it, but it is very good. I'm near the end. I'll probably finish tonight, but I'm also listening on audiobook to the Pillars of the Earth prequel, The Evening and the Morning by Ken Follett. And I love it. I've talked about this before, but I love his books as audiobooks. And especially, I think now I've realized it because I listened to all of this series on audiobook, because just to be honest, the characters are all pretty much the same in every book. Like, they're different people, but they are the same characters and same character types, and the same kinds of things are happening. Like, there's political intrigue, there's, you know, people trying to hold power in the town, and there's people trying to best each other or outwit each other. And they're the same types of people, and you know who's good, you know who's bad, you know who to root for, you know who to root against. It's so comforting. So that's why I like, especially for an audiobook, because I'm like, oh, I know what is going on here. I know this dynamic. Also, I'm having fun figuring out like how the characters relate to the characters in Pillars of the Earth, because this book will end where it starts. So it's really, it's fun to see how like they're building up to where Kingsbridge, the town in Pillars of the Earth, is going to be at that point. So yeah, it's good.
Yay.
Okay, so just like last week, we have a super jam-packed book news segment. And on the plus side, unlike last week, most of what we have is really great. So I'm gonna start off with the one that's not as great, and then we'll go from there. So recently on Twitter, a teacher asked S.E. Hinton, who is an author and who wrote The Outsiders when she was a teenager herself, if she thought there could be a possible graphic novel for The Outsiders. And she did not like the idea. She said that a lot of people have told her that The Outsiders was the first book they ever read, and really the first book that gave them confidence that they could read, you know, a book for fun or enjoyment. And she was basically like, I'm not taking that away from them. And Twitter did not like this very much. And so there was a huge outcry. And to her credit, she did not double down and triple down and quadruple down like some authors would do. Not talking about anybody in particular right there. And she apologized. And I don't know if that means that she would be more open to a graphic novel, but I like that she apologized.
Yeah,
Even
because
though
her first tweet was very dismissive of graphic novels. I mean, she basically said they're not real books.
Right.
And she wants people to read her book and not just turn the pages of a graphic novel, which I guess she doesn't know how they work, because they are usually packed with words that you have to read. So
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's fine if you don't envision your novel as a graphic novel. Like, that's fine, you know?
Right.
Like, there's nothing wrong with her being like, you know what, I can't really see it as a graphic novel myself. Oh, okay, that's great. But yeah, just the fact that she did insinuate that graphic novels weren't real books, and reading them isn't real reading, which was just very weird.
Yeah.
And disappointing.
It feels a little ableist too, because I feel like a graphic novel is a great entry point to reading for a lot of people for whom a novel might be challenging or just not how they take in information. You know, everyone learns and reads and experiences things differently. You know, it's what bothers me when people say that audiobooks aren't real books. They absolutely are, and that's ableist to say that, because if you're blind, then an audiobook, or if you're visually impaired, then an audiobook is a great option. So I just think that people need to open their minds a little. Essie Hinton should open her mind, and it sounds like she is. She apologized and she accepted the feedback, which is good, and is reconsidering. So yeah, it has a good ending, but the original tweet was disappointing.
Well, I would say too, and this just occurred to me, it's a weird stance to take for someone who has sold the rights to her book to appear in a movie or to become a movie. So it's not like you're necessarily precious about the idea like this particular story can only be consumed in this particular way. And I think I know obviously The Outsiders was a movie. I think one of her other books was adapted too. And there's actually two different versions of The Outsiders. There's the original theatrical film, and then they had sort of a director's cut where they put all these deleted scenes back in. So it's a much more faithful rendering of the novel. And, you know, yeah, like, and maybe she ended up not liking that. So maybe that's why she's so protective about changing a format. But
I didn't even know she wrote another book. I didn't think she had another book.
I think she has one called Rumblefish, and I think there might be a couple more, but
yeah.
No,
but that's a good point, though. I mean, you had no problem with your book being made into a movie, which people don't have to read anything in order to experience. So it's a great point. But it sounds like she has backed off and maybe reconsidered, which is good.
I hope so. And it also easily could just be, fine, I'm sorry, don't yell at me anymore.
It could
but
be,
you know, I'll take it. Still
I have to try and feel hopeful a little bit that people can change for the better. It's 2020, so it's really hard, but I'll take it.
Yeah, it's not a loss. But in better news, so Isabel Wilkinson's book Cast, her second nonfiction book, I believe, has been adapted by Netflix. It will be a movie very soon, or I guess a documentary. And Ava DuVernay will write, produce, and direct it. And I'm so excited. Hopefully I will read Cast by the time this Netflix production comes out. We'll see. But everything I hear about it is just completely amazing.
It was a book of the month. It was a book of the month, and I bet it'll be a book of the year finalist, if not book of the year, because it's getting a lot of praise. I have it on my list of books to get.
I just so happened to get it from Book of the Month, so you're welcome to borrow it at any time.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
And finally, and probably what I am most excited about, Disney is doing an adult novel line. And when I say adult, I mean novels for adults, not like, you know, grown-up sex content. Although maybe, we don't know.
Disney in 2020 is certainly different than when I was a kid.
But it's an updated fairy tale line for adults. And the first one is a Cinderella retelling written by Julie Murphy, who I love so much. Everything about this makes me so happy.
It sounds great. It sounds a little Devil Wears Prada, because she's working for the main character is working for her stepmother at a like fashion designer, like she's a fashion designer. I don't know. It just, it sounded great.
Yeah.
She has 100% success rate with me. So I know whatever Julie Murphy ends up doing, I am all in.
Yep, we're on board.
So, yeah.
So we're getting 2 books by Julie Murphy next year.
Ooh, yeah, Pumpkin.
Pumpkin's coming out, and this one's coming out.
What did we do?
We're so spoiled.
We're so spoiled. We got to get her on the podcast.
Oh,
I would love that.
Great.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we survived 2020, the literal least we deserve is 2 books by Julie Murphy.
Good point.
Exactly.
I will consider that my just reward.
Okay, so our next segment is recent acquisitions. So I'm going to start with Julia. What have you recently acquired?
Just one book for me this week. It's The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I know almost nothing about this. I just know that we picked it for our book club that Kelly and I are in here in Baltimore. Kelly, it's one of her top 5 books to read. So I know what she mentioned about it on the podcast, but I know it's a magic library where books can transport you to different worlds. So it definitely sounds up my alley. Yeah, so I'm excited. And the cover is very pretty if you're looking on YouTube. The Midnight Library by Matt Haig.
I like it.
Yeah.
Great. Kelly, what about you?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I actually really steered us toward the Midnight Library so that I would get at least one book done for the challenge. So my Machiavellian ways.
Stacking the deck.
Yes.
I'm still 0 for 5. I'm just going to say.
I am still 0 for 5, but it's going to change.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon. My friend Kathy was kind of teasing me because what I really like to do is make a list and then not follow through. Like, oh, these are movies I'm going to watch for Halloween, and then I don't. And these are books I'm going to read soon, and then I don't. But I am this time.
Good for
like,
you.
For real.
Hey, Kelly.
So I have 2 recent acquisitions. My first, my author friend Darby Karchut sent me an early copy of On a Good Horse, which is her contemporary middle grade debut. She mostly does like kind of fantasy things about really creepy monsters and, you know, gross things that would be great for middle grade readers. But this is a contemporary story, and I have already read it. It's amazing. It's out November 10th. So if you know like a middle grade reader, especially one who likes horses, this is for them. And then also today, I ended up, I'm trying to follow Rachel's example and not buy books all the time. And since I bought a book today, I am not doing very well. But I bought Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. And I don't know too much about it, but here's the pitch that made me get it. So like, what if the Ku Klux Klan was actually demons? Like literal demons that you had to fight? And I was like, okay, I'm in. So it's a novella too. So I think it's pretty, maybe like 200-ish pages, I think. So I'm very excited to see what happens if the KKK is actual demons, not just the metaphorical demons that I already thought.
Yeah.
Great. So I have been sticking to my book buying ban, but I did get a book because I forgot I had an unused credit on Libro.fm. So I got an audiobook, and I needed to get it because we're reading it for our book club, the one I'm at in my town here. And so it's Redhead by the Side of the Road by Ann Tyler. I have to read it by Tuesday, which is 4 days from now. But it's like a 5-hour audiobook, so I'll probably read it over the weekend, listen to it. And I know nothing about it, which I'm really excited about. I just know I have to read it. I assume there's someone with red hair in it. But other than that, I know nothing about it.
If not, then
The title's
it's
just
a twist. Yeah.
I'm actually wearing a wig. That's a big reveal. Gone Girl level.
Yeah.
So that's my acquisition.
Okay, so now we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to do our episode Books You Should Read by Black Authors, Part 2. We did Part 1 earlier this year, so we're excited to talk about more great books that you should be reading, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Sherna Phillips. So stick around, and we'll be right back.
So we are back, and we're very excited to do our second discussion of Black authors. And we are joined today by our brilliant friend, Dr. Sherna Phillips, who has left us for Atlanta, but hopefully will come back, and who is the most accomplished person. She has written plays, she acts, she sings, she does poetry. She is completely brilliant and wonderful. You will want to follow her on Twitter and Instagram. So thank you so much for coming, Dr. Sherna.
Thank you for having me. I don't know
I'm
if I'm
just
the most accomplished, but thank you for the compliment.
You are, though. And I'm going to just keep calling you Dr. Sherna, not like Dr. Phil, but because, you know, you worked hard. And also you look
Dr.
very,
Nay. Dr. Nay. That's what my students call me. Dr. Nay.
I love that you're like, call me Dr. Nay, not Dr. Sherna.
Yeah, Dr. Nay is cooler.
You look super cold. Is there a blanket there where you are?
You know what? It's funny you asked. The blanket is right here.
What is that?
So yeah, I told you I would have it queued up. So this blanket is a blanket that my aunt made for me because I graduated. I got I defended my dissertation in March. Okay. I flew home to Morgan State University, my HBCU, on March 5th. I defended my dissertation on March 6th. I flew back to Atlanta on March 8th. When I flew back to Atlanta, the planes were empty. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen in my life. BWI was like a ghost town. The Atlanta airport, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, I don't know the stat, airports in the United States, was nearly empty. Okay. So I haven't been home since. Anyways, my aunt, she's a really wonderful crocheter. She crocheted me this blanket, and you see it, and it has a face mask, and it has class of 2020, and you probably can't see, but at the bottom it has my name. It has Dr. Sherna Phillips on it. So she gave me this. She sent this to me like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago as a surprise gift because I never got a chance to have a commencement ceremony, be hooded, or anything like that. And I don't know when or if it will ever happen. So anyway, she made me this, and Kelly saw it on Facebook and told me to bring it. So.
Nice.
I love it. I love the little face mask.
I feel like we're told and taught implicitly and explicitly not to brag about our accomplishments. And you got your PhD. So every single time I refer to you from now on, you are Dr. Nay.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
But I guess, unfortunately, this is not a podcast for how amazing you are.
No, it's about books.
But maybe we can do a mini-sode about that later. So, we are here, as we have said, to discuss Black authors. And you get to go first, because you are the guest.
Hey, so I've never done this, so I don't know, how in-depth it's supposed to go. You know what I'll do? I'll start with the youngest, and I'll go up to the adult. So this book, Genesis Begins Again.
Ooh.
I literally just finished reading this, okay? This book is big. This took me a while to get through. I'm like, is this a middle grade book? Is this what's happening in middle grade right now? What in the world? But I read it first because, first of all, I work at Atlanta Public Schools, the central office. And so last I don't even know my days anymore, but last spring-ish or something, we had a Scholastic book fair. So I went in there and I was like, oh, I'm going to buy me a middle grade book. And they recommended, the librarians, the media specialists, we call them now, recommended this book because they said, this is a middle grade book, but adults can enjoy it as well. So it's Genesis Begins Again by Alicia D. Williams. And it is, it came out in 2019. This is her first book, Alicia's first book. I think she's from Detroit. Yeah, she's definitely from Detroit, but she lives in North Carolina now. And she, at the time of writing the book, was a middle school teacher. So the story is about Genesis, who's this little Black girl, 13 years old, who has become accustomed to relocating because her dad has a gambling and alcohol addiction. So that's when she gets settled into a new school. She has to move once again. And so the story kind of starts off with she's in Detroit at the time, and she's really excited because her friends are going to finally get to come over to her house. And she's never allowed to really have friends over. So she's really excited about it. As she nears her house, she sees that all of her stuff is outside on the sidewalk. She's like, oh gosh, not again. We're getting evicted once again. So we're like right in the beginning of just like the middle of her name kind of alludes to starting over. So the story follows her journey of being evicted, relocating to a location outside of Detroit, Farmington Hills, which is, I don't really know much about it. It's a real place, but I think it's more like a suburban area. It's totally different from what she's accustomed to. So you also get this like shot of water hail going on, and she finally meets friends. She continues to get bullied by her appearance because she's a very dark-skinned girl. Her mom is fairly light, so there's a theme of colorism in this book as well. She gets bullied about being too dark. She gets bullied about not having things that other kids have. She really, I'm not going to say that she overcomes all of these things, but by the end of it, she gets to a place where she's starting to accept herself for who she is, and she comes into her own and really comes into her own talents. She learns more about her talents and abilities and steps into her greatness. So it's a really, really good book. I would recommend for ages, 11 and up. Alicia Williams.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I also
go to the next, or are we going around? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say when you said Scholastic Book Fair, we were all like, yeah, we remember that. It was like always my favorite day. And I love, when you find, when you're a kid and you find a book that is just like your favorite thing. So that sounds really great.
Yeah, the cool thing about this particular Scholastic Book Fair, it was all adults in there because it was at it was in our central office. So it wasn't at one of our schools. This was just a central office Scholastic Book Fair. And media specialists held it because they wanted us to buy books to donate to students. And so, of course, what books to donate to students? But I was like, well, I want to book for myself. Yeah. So I got this, and I got couple of others that I haven't read yet. I'm going to give to my niece. This one I don't know if I'm going to give to her because her parents are a little bit more conservative, and I don't know if I would want her to read it. So, but if you're not conservative, then this is a good book.
Great.
So I have a question. So anybody could have a Scholastic Book Fair. Say it doesn't have to be at a school.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure. I've never seen it done with like outside of a school or outside of a school district or whatever, but I'm sure you could.
I'm going to do some research on this for reasons.
You should do it, Kelly.
Can you imagine? You would just be like, yeah, there's going to be a Scholastic Book Fair, and then I'll just like give them directions to Julia's front yard. And then it would be just like, Us and maybe Philip, who would be making fun of us, but there anyway. Not at all super awkward. Oh, but super fast, while we're talking about your family, and I guess we can cut this part out. How's your nephew doing?
Oh, he's a huge boy. He's a
like
grown
10.
man, Kelly. He's 200 pounds. Okay.
How old is he?
5'10", 200 pounds. He plays football. So and the only reason why I know that is because he sent me his highlight reel and it said 200 pounds, 5'10". And I'm like, when the heck did he get that big? He's like solid and he's like a little man now and everything. But yeah, he's good. He graduated from high school 2020, class of 2020 as well. And he's in this post-grad program. It's like this football scholastic program. I don't understand sports like that, but it's basically a program for like high school athletes who I guess want to continue playing sports and don't want to lose their eligibility.
Yeah.
Whatever. He's having a good time. He's in Pittsburgh.
It's good.
Yeah.
Every time I think about him, I picture him as being like the 8-year-old who ate your cheesecake that time.
He never ate my cheesecake again after that. Because Auntie doesn't usually get mad at him, So I was like at work. We were both at WJZ at the time, and I was at work just thinking about that cheesecake. I had got a cheesecake, a red velvet cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory, and I usually when I get it, it's so rich that I can't eat it in one sitting. So I probably eat it like a quarter of it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna eat the rest of it when I get home tonight. And he ate my cheesecake.
I'm mad for you.
So mad. Friends were over there playing the little PlayStation, wherever the hell they play. And I was like, wait, where's my cheesecake? And his friend looks at him. And I'm like, did you eat my cheesecake? Like, you don't eat Auntie's cheesecake. That is one thing you do not do. And his friend's like, oh, you're going to get in trouble. He was like, well, usually when you have things in the refrigerator, it's for everybody. No, it's not for everybody. That's my cheesecake. And then after I finished it, I came back. I said, and another thing, you stole my cheesecake in the back of that refrigerator. Anyway, he's never eaten any cheesecake again from me. He learned his lesson.
That's so funny.
So cute.
He probably never ate cheesecake again.
I have not seen him eat cheesecake.
It's like too many bad memories.
He's like at a friend's house and they're like, hey, you want some cheesecake? And he's like, no, I don't like cheesecake.
So upset.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Tastes like rage and guilt.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I guess that's our bonus what you should not eat segment.
Yes.
Renee's cheesecake.
Dr. Nate's cheesecake.
Sorry. Rachael.
Okay, so my first pick is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I love this book so much. I think I'm going to reread it soon because it's just one of those books that you just get lost in the story and it's like you're a part of the world. So it's about this boy named Elwood. It's set in the 1960s and he's a Black boy and he gets into a little bit of trouble with the law and they send him to this school in Florida that's like a juvenile delinquent quote school for boys, and it's a boarding school, so he lives there, and it's segregated and the teachers are very much they treat all of the students poorly, but especially the students of color. And he makes a friend, I think his name is Tyler or Turner, sorry. So his friend's name is Turner, and they just become really good buddies. And it's pretty a sad book, but it's also like hopeful, like, are they gonna, be okay? Are we gonna sort of get out of this situation? And sort of a redemption story to it. But definite trigger warnings because there's a lot of abuse in that the teachers put on the students. But it's just, I mean, it's Colson Whitehead. It's, you know, just such a great book. So I recommend it. So that's The Nickel Boys.
I remember being surprised by the ending too of that book. Yeah, there was
like,
yeah. Great. Me next?
Yes.
Okay, so my first pick is Transcendent Kingdom by Djeli. This is her newest book. It just came out this year. And I read her first novel, Homegoing, which I loved. And I think I talked about it the last episode. So I was super excited that she had this book coming out this year. This book is very different. Homegoing was more of historical fiction and told in different vignettes from different perspectives. This is told all from one POV. The main character is a woman named Gifty, who is in present day, because the book shifts back and forth in time from her childhood to adulthood. And in present day, she is a PhD in neuroscience, and she is researching addiction and the reason that she's doing that is personal to her because her brother died of a heroin overdose when they were very young. I think he was in high school, and her mother suffers from depression. And the other thing about their family is they are a Ghanaian immigrant family. Her parents emigrated from Ghana. And also her mom was very involved in the evangelical church. So that's how Gifty was raised. So she's sort of, you know, the book talks a lot about her evangelical background and the fact that now she's a scientist. I will say not a lot happens in this book plot-wise. Like, it's not very plot heavy, but it's very, very good at the character development, and just the writing is so, so beautiful. You know, we're sort of following along with her, thinking back on her childhood and her reflecting on like things that she thought back then and her family, and just like specific lines in the book, you know, I would have to reread them so many times because they were so beautiful. So I just want to read a couple because she writes of her father, who she calls the Chin Chin Man. She says, "You should have seen the way the Chin Chin Man smiled at Nana." Nana's her brother. "His entire face was in on it. His eyes brightened, his lips spread back until they were touching his ears lifted. Nana's face returned the compliment, smiling and kind. My father's heart was a light bulb, dimming with age. Nana was pure light." So it's just so poetic. And then it's also very funny at times, but she'll sort of take you in with the humor and lightness, and then all of a sudden does something that just sort of wrenches your heart. It's a very sad book in a lot of ways too, but one part that I really loved that I thought was cute was, as a kid, she's keeping this journal that she writes letters to God in. And she's a paranoid journal keeper. So she comes up with a code name for her brother and her mom so that they don't know that she's writing about them. So she calls her brother Buzz, and she calls her mom the Black Mamba because she'd been learning about snakes in school. So she writes in her journal, "Dear God, the Black Mamba has been really mean to me lately. Yesterday she told me that if I didn't clean my room, no one would want to marry me." So it's just like, got little funny moments like that, but then also it's just so heart-wrenching. And yeah, like I said, there's not a ton that happens. You kind of know what's happening, like what has happened from the very beginning, but she's just going back and taking you through what led up to those events. And yeah, I highly recommend it. Transcendent Kingdom by Djeli.
Nice.
I also read that, as you know, and I